Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government.
Did you know that crows are illegal to own as pets? And the real reason for this is much more shocking than you might know. First of all, they say that crows have an intelligence of a 5 to 7-year-old child, but I think that this is very debatable. Check this video out. Now watch how this crow figures out how to get the food that is trapped in this box. This is the first time this crow has ever used this tool and has ever tried to get the food out of this box. It realizes that it needs to bend this specific tool at the end, flip it, put it back in this way in order to scoop the food out of the box. This is an extremely intelligent creature, guys. Now they say that crows are illegal to own because they can be trained to retrieve money for people. And not only money, but literally anything. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Crows can actually remember specific human faces. Not only can they remember these faces, but they can pass this information on to their offspring and their friends. So if you do something good for a crow, that crow, its friends, and its offspring will come around you. If you do something negative towards a crow, then they will stay away from you. Now imagine if human beings were able to tap into this ability. If crows can differentiate between friend and foe, work together, and even tell their young about threats, then what else could they be capable of? Maybe this is a part of why they don't want us forming relationships with these creatures. Because a world where humans and crows work together could be a serious threat to the system. It's like they don't want us to have allies in nature, especially the incredibly intelligent ones. Again, this is a massive reason why they don't allow us to interact with dolphins. It is illegal to interact with them except for at a resort like SeaWorld. When you research dolphin-assisted births, you'll understand why. Because these children are born incredibly intelligent. They are far more advanced than the average child. Now, the Native Americans believed that crows were incredibly spiritual creatures. They symbolize wisdom, intelligence, and even shape-shifting between physical and spiritual realms. They knew that they were quite literally messengers. This is why they were highly depicted in a lot of their art. Could it be that keeping us away from crows is just another way to suppress human consciousness? Think about it, we can own parrots, reptiles, snakes, whatever it might be, but we can't own crows. A creature that has been deeply linked to spirituality in all of our ancient cultures. Now, I know that these beings are incredibly spiritual because I have had some unbelievable experiences with them. I know that they are tapped into the spiritual realm. And I understand that the real reason that we cannot own them is much deeper than what they tell you.
Lucifer is Jesus in the Bible. Jesus even says it in himself. He says in Revelation 16, the 22:16, the very last book of the Bible is Revelation. And the very last chapter in Revelation is the 22nd chapter. So go to the very last chapter, the very last book, and look up Revelation 22:16. And Jesus said, I, Jesus, I am the offspring of David, and I am Lucifer.
So the Christians are also worshiping the opposite than what they believe,
That's
what they
exactly
think
right.
they're doing.
They're worshiping Lucifer.
The same that you said that the Jews are doing.
Yeah, exactly. And the Muslims too. The whole world
is worshiping what? Something satanic?
Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that when I say satanic, I think the whole world and all the worship is going on throughout the world is being led. We are all humans, and we're being led into this by higher powers in the universe.
People who expose the truth.
Ever wondered why graduates wear this hat? The hat is a square and a circle. The square created by the square, the circle created by the compass, which is the Freemasonic square and compass. The circle is eternal, no beginning, no end. The square creates the square, which is beginning and end. Spirit and matter, mind over matter, the compass over the square. But in this case, we have the square over the circle, which represents matter over the spirit. The graduation cap symbolizes dominance of matter over spirit, representing the conditioning imposed by Saturnic energy. Hence why it's a black cat for the black cube of Saturn. That's why judges wear a black robe, representing reinforcement and limitation. This is not a coincidence. Is university just conditioning to limit the human mind?
Even with animals, they put chips in animals, and this should be completely illegal. The whole thing's with the chips in the animals. But you can take a magnet and you can place it over the chip, and it'll actually destroy the chip that's in the animal. So like cats and dogs, when they chip them, so that you can find them for safety purposes and whatever it may be. Well, what people don't realize is that those chips are emitting a radio frequency the whole time, and then the animal, such as the dog or cat, begins to come down with in that area or a tumor. People should get that removed, or like I said, you might be able to use a very strong magnet to disable that. And that's another one. Those vets, that's why they're chipping all your animals. If they're not chipping you as a person, they're chipping your animals. I mean, so it's a form of control. And then they'll say you need a robot animal next, which will also come with a microchip, and sync up to the internet. So you got to think about, what's best for your pets and what's best for their long-term health. Now, I'm sure there's always a counter to things like that. If you look into like I think it's like the Hulda Clark Zapper or something. I'm sure there's stuff like that. Maybe something that could be.
It's very easy to get exactly what you want if you try. What you have is people who try 60%. They try one day, then they miss a day. Then they try 3 days, then they miss a day. And then they say, I tried my best, but I still failed. This isn't real. You didn't try your best because you missed a day.
Take a look at this masterpiece. This is 1,900 years old, containing a hologram effect. Proof that we were far more advanced than what we are led to believe in our history.
Every night when you close your eyes, you leave this realm. The Bible calls it the spirit world. The ancients called it the astral plane. Tesla called it a frequency shift. But the elite, they know the truth, that when your body sleeps, your soul travels. Where do you go? Beyond the veil. Beyond this simulation. Dreams are not illusions. They are glimpses of the real world. The one they don't want you to remember. The Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Watchers, they built the cage you live in. This world is not the base reality. It is a construct, a prison, a frequency trap. Your body stays here, but your consciousness, it slips through. That's why you wake up and forget. The system erases your memories. If you remembered what you saw, you would know this world is a lie. You would know the real war isn't fought in governments, in banks, in armies. It is fought inside your mind. Lucid dreaming, a crack in the code, sleep paralysis, a battle at the gateway, deja vu memories from the other side leaking through. The elite know this. That's why they poison your pineal gland, flood your mind with distractions, keep you locked in low.
The people who are in charge do not respect us because we keep falling for their fucking stupid, obvious lies.
If you were to take a hologram, say a picture of me, and you were to take that hologram and split it into 1 billion pieces, infinite pieces, and you took one little sliver, that little sliver of the hologram of the picture of me would contain the entire picture of me, just from a different perspective at a lower resolution. So as we descend from Source, the One, the All, we are simply different fractals of Source that contain the whole from slightly different perspectives at a lower resolution. Because as Source, as the One with complete order, there's nothing to experience other than itself amongst itself. And most people say, well, what's the point? What's the point of being God and having all this power? Well, God, Source, existence wants to experience itself in infinite ways. So instead of asking why all this power, what's the point of it all, and asking that to the universe and to existence, you need to be asking that to yourself. Because the truth is, the purpose of it all is up for you to decide. As God's Source, you could have experienced anything, and in fact, you have. But still, you chose to incarnate as you. Why?
That scoop mark stuff is absolutely a part of this ancient lost civilization.
What's the wackiest explanation for these scoop marks?
Some sort of molecular softening tool that just comes in and scoops it out. Like somehow it gets between the...
Molecular softening tool.
Like these scoops in places, it's almost as if they articulate. They're not just straight down, but they bend. So imagine a backhoe arm. There's an articulation to these lines. There's something going on that is enabling them to scoop that material out of there in an effortless fashion.
So I think one of the things that we need to be able to do is realize that our brain is not a hard drive storage unit. It's not a place for us to cram information into to just memorize. What it is, it's a radio receiver with a processor. And that radio receiver has a tuning dial that's your heart. And as you are able to tap into the frequencies that are in the field around you, all the knowledge you could ever want and have access to is all in this Akashic field all around you. And you can tune into that radio and capture information you've never even learned before. And this is what people refer to as downloading. And it's part of the process of going into higher dimensional experience, realizing that the things that we thought we learned as facts are not really facts at all, they're merely facets. And we're looking at one aspect of a prism rather than looking at the complete prism. And the only way for me to be able to understand the complete prism is to have enough non-judgment of that outer world so that I can tune in with high frequency and then also realize that it's your judgment that holds you back. And that the only thing that's real in this universe, or U-inverse, is what you persistently believe. So the only real obstacles in life are the imaginary ones.
Look at the fucking state of that. Look fucking X's and O's, look. I've never seen nothing like that in my fucking life.
No, you see, here's the problem. You don't know the history of psychiatry. I do. All it does is mask the problem, Matt. And if you understand the history of it, it masks the problem. That's what it does. That's all it does. You're not getting to the reason why. There is no such thing as a chemical imbalance. I'm saying that drugs aren't the answer, that these drugs are very dangerous. They're mind-altering, antipsychotic drugs.
Okay, so that is a famous clip of Tom Cruise talking to Matt Lauer from back in 2005. And what if I told you that Tom Cruise was absolutely right, and this guy got slaughtered for this interview? He was ridiculed by people at the time, saying that he was a Scientologist, and he had no idea what he was talking about. He is a Scientologist, but what I have to say is he knows exactly what he's talking about. The criticism of Tom Cruise for this has aged very poorly because he's spot on. There is no chemical imbalance. The way these drugs work is that they mask symptoms and they don't get to the root cause. And yes, these are powerful mind-altering drugs, and for many people, they can make them worse in the long run. I talk to people every day who say they were tricked into taking psychiatric medications by doctors who told them they were fixing an underlying chemical imbalance. We need to start coming clean and tell people the truth about these medications.
Project 2045, transferring human consciousness into robots and computers and eventually into synthetic embryos. They want to create and supply the world with affordable Android avatars that will be controlled by a system that links people's brains with computers. We have that now. 2020 to 2025, they would like to create autonomous life support systems which a human brain can be taken out of a body and kept alive while being linked to a robotic avatar. Their hope is that the person whose body is failing can live a full life. 2030 to 2035, a group wishes to create immortality by building a computer model of the brain that allows human consciousness to be transferred into the artificial carrier, giving everyone the possibility of a cybernetic immortality. And by 2045, they would like to have established a new era for humanity in which technological brains and transferred minds can receive new bodies with capabilities that far exceed the abilities of the standard human body. They're talking about avatars.
The human biofield, what people know as an aura, is thought to be a kind of a bubble around the person. But you have to realize every part in our physical body has energy. So the calcium that make up the skeletal structure, the bones, are all emitting energy. And the blood, it's all red little blood cells that each one has Fe, iron in it. It has a different field of energy. And our neurons working and sending with sodium and potassium, all of this electricity running through our brain and spine and nerves, it has another level of electricity. So when talking about a human energy field, next time try sensing. You might be able to feel these different layers inside.
performing excavations at the ancient site, Dr. Vranich decided to embark on his own reconstruction project in hopes of answering some of Pumapunku's many mysteries. Dr. Vranich's reconstruction would be computer-generated, and the first step was to precisely measure every stone block.
I used a lot of interesting and new technologies, from laser scanners to photogrammetry, but the best method ended up being tape measure, pen and paper. And I used the notes from scholars from over a century ago, from the 1840s to the 1890s, and then recently an architect from UC Berkeley did a lot of the drawings of these stones, and that became the basis for the reconstruction.
Once Dr. Vranich completed the arduous task of documenting the measurements of every known stone block and slab at Pumapunku, he 3D printed them at UCLA, where he was working as a research associate and visiting assistant professor. With help from his students, he began putting together the puzzle pieces.
We had a lot of pieces, and we had no idea how to go about putting it together. There was a couple of rules that had been found on how some of these stones or how some of the ornaments fit. Certain types of windows or niches are always found in certain patterns or in certain combinations. We continued to play with this model probably for over a year, and we were almost at our wits' end, going, we're not going to be able to put this together, when we finally had a moment of insight. We were able to put together two different pieces that formed what one wall of the temple would have looked like.
Dr. Vranich and his students had discovered what he calls the Tiwanaku Rosetta Stone.
That allowed us to find the other pieces and fit them together. And once we had that, we realized we actually had a miniature version of the Pumapunku, down to almost exact size, 0.57 in scale. That was one of those aha moments that almost surprises you. For an archaeologist, it's one of those moments that you live for.
What Einstein said is that the only way that the speed of light should not change, no matter how fast the source of light is moving towards you, is something else has to change. And he said that something is time. Time has to slow down in order to keep the speed of light from changing. This was shown with ordinary passenger jets traveling at the speed of sound. What they did was to take atomic clocks, which are the most precise time-keeping mechanism we have. They put one of the atomic clocks on an ordinary passenger jet. They put the other atomic clock stationary. They flew the passenger jet around the world. When they brought it back, the clock on the passenger jet had slowed down compared to the clock that was at rest at the Naval Observatory. This shows that at any speed, time will slow down. But the faster we go, the more time will slow down.
There's 3 cities that you need to study how they operate and how they transact with each other and with the world. There's 3 independent nation states: Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican. The political arm, the financial arm, and the religious arm of the world. That's all I'm going to say. Look into those 3 things, do some rabbit trailing, and I'll stop there.
You truly believe that the FDA, the FTC, the AMA, they're really trying to hide this information from the American public, and it's all because of the money?
Hundreds of billions to trillions of dollars are at stake. They make more money than the United States government does. Think about it, my God. And as a result, 75% of all political contributions come from the drug industry.
Sure.
Almost 90% of all those people involved in the AMA, FTC end up with multi-million-dollar pensions in the drug industry. And here's one more thing. Every year, they withdraw 25 drugs because those drugs are killing people. So in the last 40 years, there's been 1,000 drugs that kill people that have been withdrawn from the market. How did they get on the market in the first place? And the answer is, all drugs are automatically pre-approved because the FDA, the AMA are owned by the drug industry. No drug has ever cured a degenerative disease. However, these scientists are saying God's nutrients do. The AMA, the FDA, FTC are all working in conjunction with the drug industry to suppress this information.
This is how you direct energy.
This is how we photograph cymatics. We push energy through water, and when that water resonates, it creates geometry which bends the light that we're shining above it into these cool patterns. This is Chichen Itza, and this is the Kicker 12-inch subwoofer. These two share a relationship with water. If you know the geography of the Yucatan, you know that these pyramids were built over aquifers. I want you to look really closely at the components of that pyramid and the components of this subwoofer. Combining different materials with the flow of energy guides that compressed air into your ear that we perceive as sound. Now, this is what happens when you hook a very small crystal pyramid up to a Tesla coil and observe the electrical discharge. Depending on the flow of this energy, it can be dispersed or focused. That's why pyramids, stupas, and cathedrals all follow the same resonant geometry. That shape is a guide, but why over water? If you look closely, cathedrals, the pyramid, and Tesla's Wycliffe Tower are all built over aquifers. We're gonna find out. But the energy here is fundamental. This is the geometry used in high transmission acoustic focusing. Now, these are not acoustic devices, but all waves follow the same rules. As above, so below, with the frequency spectrum. Why were all of these cultures so obsessed with resonance and waveguides? What do you think they were doing with the energy? What was the energy? I'm going to leave you with this cliffhanger because I think you know the answer.
Over 80% of heart attacks and strokes are not plaque, cholesterol, or calcium that's blocking your arteries. Most of the time, when someone has a heart attack or a stroke, they die from a clot. This is not the same, and it's very different than a buildup of cholesterol or calcium or plaque. If someone told you the reason why you die is your arteries fill up with cholesterol, they are lying to you. That's usually not what kills you. It's the clot that can form in less than 5 seconds. What we're going to do today is we're going to really dissect a clot and understand what it is and give you a solution to prevent clots, because a clot is a very necessary thing. A clot is a response to injury. And the way it's supposed to work is the body's supposed to form a clot, fix the hole in the artery, and then dissolve it. The real problem that we need to focus on is the hole in the artery, but the biggest trigger to a clot is not cholesterol. It's not calcium. Number one, and people know this, is the inhalation of smoke from cigarette smoke. Now your arteries are exposed to all these chemicals, and it's going to create inflammation. Also, pollution or being around any type of chemicals in the environment can do that as well. A solution is not to do vaping, okay? You need to just stop smoking. Alcohol is another one. You're drinking alcohol. It's considered a poison to the liver. It gets into the bloodstream, and that also can create problems in the inside of the arteries. Believe it or not, birth control pills or hormone replacement therapy is another thing that can actually affect the arteries because of the hormonal interaction, increasing the risk of a stroke and heart attacks. Then you have stress. And this is an interesting one because there's something called the broken heart syndrome, where someone has a loss of a loved one and their risk of having a heart attack goes up by 2,000%, which, by the way, triggers the clotting action. Anything that increases stress can increase the clotting action. But also surgery. Okay, surgery is a very stressful thing to the body. And endurance sports, marathons. It's a tremendous stress in your body, and refined starches. That's just like pure inflammation going through your arteries. And this is why diabetics are at 4 to 5 times the risk for getting clots, not just in the heart, but in the brain as well. And the last thing that can trigger these clots is an infection. It could come from an infection in your tooth from a failed root canal, where you have this abscess that's leaking bacteria into the body, or it can come from some other chronic infection. But I think for most people, it's going to be the high levels of sugar that's flowing through their bloodstream that's creating the problem because of their diet, and it makes their blood really sticky. Also, it chronically elevates inflammation. Inflammation is one of the most potent things for clotting. There's another trigger for this clot as well, an excess amount of calcium in the arteries. And let me explain this, because in certain studies involving postmenopausal women who take high amounts of calcium for their bones, they have an increased risk of getting this clot, because calcium is involved in over 15 different clotting factors. I'm talking about excess calcium. Excess calcium is just not good for the heart. It can cause excessive calcification in the soft tissues, especially in the arteries. As the antidote, and the thing that kind of counters this clotting, there's 2 things that are very, very important to know. Number one is vitamin K2. The purpose of vitamin K2 is to keep the calcium from building up in the soft tissue. K2 is all about keeping the calcium out of the arteries. And guess where vitamin K2 comes from? Dairy, butter. It comes from fatty foods. The exact things that they tell you to avoid because of the cholesterol. You should always take vitamin D with vitamin K2 simply because vitamin D is super important as an anti-inflammatory in the inside of the arteries, and it works together with vitamin K2. Magnesium is another very important calcium regulator, and it prevents calcium from going inside the tissues. Magnesium helps prevent arrhythmias, especially atrial fibrillation, which, by the way, causes an arrhythmic problem in the heart that can cause pooling of the blood that can increase your risk of getting a clot. What turns down clotting? The big one is something called nitric oxide. Here are some things that can increase nitric oxide. Vitamin D. L-arginine is an amino acid that can help nitric oxide. And one of the best sources of L-arginine is meat and liver, the exact things that they tell you not to eat. There's something else that increases nitric oxide, sunlight, that can penetrate deep into the body and help increase nitric oxide in the inside of the arteries. This is why getting sun is so valuable in so many different ways, not just vitamin D, but other ways as well. What's happened since 1980 is we become sun phobic because we're afraid of getting melanoma, which is an absolute lie. You want to get regular doses of sun. Very therapeutic to the heart. Other things that can help you is polyphenols in natural herbs and vegetables, vitamin C, omega-3. Omega-3 fatty acids naturally thin the blood. Also, when people consume leafy green vegetables that are high in vitamin K1, they think, oh, that's a lot of vitamin K1. That's going to cause clotting. It's going to thicken my blood. No, it's not going to create thickening more than normal. It's just going to bring you to a normal level. It's not going to create excessive amount of clotting. Fasting is another potent way to help reduce the risk of clotting. Fasting is also anti-inflammatory. Ketones, getting on the ketogenic diet, a low-carb diet, is also anti-inflammatory to your arteries. Regular exercise, and I'm not talking about like high stressful exercise where you're doing marathons, but regular good exercise with good recovery is extremely important in preventing this clotting. Garlic and onion, super important in preventing clotting. As far as supplements go, there's 3 that are really powerful. Nattokinase is a natural enzyme that helps prevent clotting. You also have another enzyme called serrapeptase. That's an extract from silkworms. And then bromelain from pineapple. When you take those enzymes to help reduce clotting, and I'm not even recommending you take them unless you have a clotting problem, but they're a great natural source that's not endorsed by Big Pharma because they're competitive. You want to take those on an empty stomach so it can actually work on the factors in your blood that's maybe too excessive. Now you know the basics of what really is behind most heart attacks and strokes. Follow the advice. I hope you took notes and implement the data that I showed you in this video.
As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order.
Protest is important, and we are a free country. One of the great things about our country is that people are free to express dissenting points of view.
About what we feed kids: Pop-Tarts, white bagels, Cocoa Puffs, cereals, right? Now you just dumped folic acid into their body. And you wonder why it's a full contact sport to get the kid in the car to go to school. And then by the time they get to school, the teacher's calling saying, hey, little Johnny can't pay attention. He doesn't concentrate, doesn't focus. He doesn't finish his assignments. He's not following directions. He's got ADHD. We need to bring in the Ritalin to control this.
Big deal. This was designed. You think Chick-fil-A's designed for addiction? This was highly intentional. Phone in its settings tells you how far it has to be off of your body to prevent cancer. It tells you if you go to your settings to general, you scroll all the way down to legal and regulatory.
I've been on this for years. I've been telling people this for years. I've been showing people this for years.
Click it. The very bottom one says
phone to you.
Exposure. That stands for radio frequency.
How you supposed to operate it?
And then it
it's
tells
a
you Mine
Earbuds.
is on the second
Never in your back
paragraph.
pocket.
This must be 5 mm separation.
They're by your face.
Body. It's about a pencil eraser. So they're covered when you get brain cancer because you put your phone to your head. I always speak on speakerphone. You bet you do. Distance is your friend with radio frequency, electromagnetic fields. They just came out with a study. It just literally, the further this is away from you, the better. We're seeing a higher rate of testicular cancer on young men because they put their phone. Get your phone out of your pocket. Get it away from your testicles. Yes. So back when these were smaller and women put them in their breast, we saw breast cancers the shape of that lithium battery in there. This is radioactive. So you get it off your person. You speak on speakerphone with it, right? You don't put it up your head. You for sure.
I did my own research, but I'm glad
in a metal tube where it's
somebody made a video about
super hard to find a cell signal. So it's putting out more electromagnetic fields.
Einstein said the field is extra governing. When you need to find a signal, it's extra dangerous because it's shooting out more energy. Just beyond.
Drastic changes have taken place since the worldwide flood. Let me show you some examples. Horsetails used to be over 100 feet tall pre-flood. Sharks? Yeah, good old megalodon, 80 to 90 feet long. And humans? They were larger too.
Have you heard of the alternative to electricity? Or this guy? Probably not, so I'm gonna tell you. This is Peter Mitchell. He died in 1992 and he invented the term proticity. Just like electricity comes from electrons and is a flow of the sun, there's actually a way more prevalent flow that comes from the sun that is made of protons. So there's a positively charged flow of protons coming from the sun, and no one had named it until this guy. He named it proticity. Even more weird, he built a machine to harness proticity, just like electricity, called a protic motor, which you literally cannot Google or find anywhere. I only know about this because in the book A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple, because he was friends with this guy, he talks about the protic machine. And I think it has something to do with plasma. So this guy studied a very rare field called bioenergetics. I'm very curious why it's not more widely known. It's basically a branch of biochemistry that focuses on how cells transform energy, often by producing, storing, or consuming ATP, for short. Why this is so interesting to me is because of the whole as above, so below theory. Just like this studies cells and energy, we are cells. Us humans are cells, and our aura or our biofield is our where our membrane is, where I believe consciousness.
One of the best quotes I've ever heard on this subject is from Rumi. He said, "Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I'm wise, so I'm changing myself."
There was a man named Stanley Kubrick who produced and directed his last movie called Eyes Wide Shut. The movie Eyes Wide Shut, I think, from what indications I've received out of Hollywood, he died because of that film. I think he was assassinated because of that film, and I think he knew that his days were cut short. You need to get the movie, rent it and watch it, Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. Because in the movie he shows how very sophisticated, wealthy, intelligent elites actually live, what their secret societies, blood sacrifices, murder, rape, pornography, killing. But on the surface, they are very important looking people. They have nice suits and they look good on television. And behind the scenes, they're murderous. And that's what the movie was called, Eyes Wide Shut, because that's exactly what America is doing. It's looking at these politicians and religious leaders with their eyes wide shut. Political leaders, religious leaders, all the same thing.
If you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom a freedom zone. You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day. That's a hell of a place.
You take the Palestinians and move them around to different countries. Trump says the quiet part out loud. We'll ethnically cleanse Gaza, and we'll make Muslim-majority countries take them in.
That's a hell of a place. That's a hell of a place. That's a hell of a place.
Just as a quick reminder, there are 3.2 million Palestinians living in the West Bank under Israeli occupation. And this is important because Trump has promised Miriam Adelson, his Israeli billionaire donor, to annex the West Bank, which means that the West Bank will officially become a part of Israel, and the Palestinians living there under Israeli occupation, who are already subject to nightly raids and mass arrests without charges, are going to be either exterminated or ethnically cleansed. The Palestinians who are under Israeli occupation are going to resist ethnic cleansing, and they have a right to do so under international law. And this is important because the media is going to paint those Palestinians as terrorists in order to manufacture consent for Israel's ethnic cleansing and for the annexation of the West Bank.
About 12 years ago, when I was just about to start my bad tour, a little boy came with his parents to visit me at my California home. He was dying of cancer, and he told me how much he loved me and my music. His parents told me that he wasn't going to live, that any day he could just go. And I said to him, look, I'm going to be coming to your hometown in Kansas to start my tour in 3 months. I want you to come to the show. I'm going to give you this jacket that I wore in one of my videos. His eyes lit up. He said, you're going to give me the jacket? I said, yes, I'm going to give you the jacket. But you have to promise me that you will wear it to the show. I was trying to make him hold on. I said, when you come to the show, I want to see you in this jacket and in this glove. And I gave him one of my rhinestone gloves, which I never give to anyone. And he was just in heaven. But maybe he was too close to heaven, because when I came to his town, he had already died. And they had buried him in the glove and the jacket. He was just 10 years old. God knows, and I know, that he tried his best to hold on. But at least when he died, he knew that he was loved not only by his parents, but even by me. As a near stranger, I also loved him. In which all of that love, with all of that love, he knew that he didn't come into this world alone, and he certainly didn't leave it alone.
I then went to London. I visited the British Museum, nothing British in it. They've just gone around the world shopping, collecting artifacts, and then they give tribute to the collectors. Collectors. Is that what we are calling them? Collectors? Have you heard of Alibaba and the 40 collectors?
If I had cancer right now, Steve, I would start on a 10-day fast. Wow. I would do it. I would do it, and that would be the most potent thing I could do. And then I would go back to eating maybe once a meal for a while, and then I would go to do a 3-day fast, and then I'll do a eating, and then I'll do a 5-day fast, and then that's the most potent thing to help yourself with cancer.
Every single day, you should either drink bone broth or have a collagen supplement or some sort of protein that has collagen, like a bone broth protein or a stem cell protein. So you want to make sure that you are getting plenty of collagen in your diet every single day.
For some leaders, they don't want peace. Peace to them is just war by other means. A ceasefire is just a time to reload, increase your propaganda, bribe your allies, bribe your enemies, infiltrate others, sabotage others. A time to secure power by arresting your own political opposition and arresting, eliminating, and scaring away any protesters. There is no real peace. Peace to them is just a different type of warfare. Always expanding, always taking. And they'll never stop themselves. They'll keep going until they're forced to be stopped and forced out of power. Arrogant bullies never stop on their own. And until they're stopped, if they're stopped, they're just going to make it hell for the rest of us. In suppression, poverty, war, and prison, which is sadly the direction we're being dragged right now.
Friendly reminder, if you're okay with what's been happening to Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, you've lost your mind and humanity. That's all. Have a nice day.
Know this. Some people will not hear you regardless of how much, how loud, how truthful, or how loving you speak. Wish them well and let them go.
And that's why motion picture stars are called movie stars, because in the Bible, stars were referred to as lesser illuminaries. So these lesser illuminaries are working for the big Illuminati. So the big Illuminati are using the lesser Illuminati. The lesser illuminaries are just stars.
Now we have pictures with the president with his hand stretched out, holding a red rose.
But I have about 15 major color pictures of communist leaders throughout the world holding a red rose in their hand. And these are from newspapers and magazines. I began to pick up on this because someone alerted me to it, that the symbol of the red rose implies not only socialism and communism, but a secret society operating behind socialism and communism that uses the red rose.
This way out Willie holding the rose. We find Khrushchev. We find
all the communist leaders,
all the communist leaders, and then we find the president of the United States over in his early years leading anti-American demonstrations in the Soviet Union.
Well, I know, but I'm saying that it's not enough to say these things. You really must show the pictures so that people will see that what we're talking about here are symbols and emblems.
Well, even Hitler used red and black, didn't he?
Yes,
So.
he certainly did.
Oh my God!
Look what's happened in the last 23 years. A disgrace. I personally investigated the Oklahoma City bombing case. Huge cover-up. Jack Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. Bobby Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. World Trade Center, huge cover-up. Okay. Terrorism. They're using it as an excuse to take away our constitutional rights and our civil liberties. The Bilderbergs, the Illuminati, Bilderberg, New World Order, globalists are the element behind this. It dovetails into the satanic movement, and this movement has infiltrated into our intelligence community, the once great FBI and the CIA.
The electron is not a football. The electron is not a wave that looks like a football. The electron is not a wave at all. The electron is a particle that exists in multiple states at the same time.
United States, 800,000 children disappear annually. Between 2,000 and 4,000 disappear every day in the United States.
Yeah.
800,000 children disappear annually every year in the U.S. And amazingly, they're never found. Those children are never found. So where do you think they're going? And that's just the U.S., leave alone any other country in the U.S., in the world.
Yeah, and then this drug is called, people who can research, it's called adrenochrome monosecabazone. That's the name of the drug. It's called adrenochrome monosecabazone. We'll write it down for you, and then we'll put the drug on the screen so that people can be able to see what we are talking about. And then the tablets are called the Luciferian drugs because they are not normal, they are not human. This is a mission of the enemy. It takes a person who has sold their souls to the enemy to come up with such an idea. And this drug is really taken by these actors and actresses and musicians and soccer players. All these celebrities, most of them take this drug so that they can keep young, they can keep fit, they can keep... You find this soccer player, playing more than... In fact, when we talk about the soccer players, I'm going to explain to you about this whole Olympics thing and what it is all about, because many people just start supporting things that they don't understand, because I'm supporting the Red Devils, the other one is supporting this group, but they don't know what this whole Olympics thing is about. But I don't want to go ahead of myself. Yeah, there is this company, the Google company. They have a Google CPU graphics processing unit that they released in 2009, and they named it Adreno. And then you see they also have Google Chrome. Is this a coincidence?
Man, I've watched this video several times, and each time I still get anxiety. This guy is going to swim under this ice, which is crazy to me. There's a hole that he plans to breach and just come out of. I would never do something like this, man. Once you're under there, you're trapped. But here he goes. He's making good time. Looks to be a good swimmer, which don't matter if you're stuck under the ice. So he's passing the hole up now. This is when all the fear sets in. Everybody's starting to panic. So these guys are running. It looks like he's panicking under the ice. I don't know. I'm getting anxiety thinking about this. But anyway, this guy, he's stomping the ice out. If that ice was any thicker, man, this guy would be a goner. Luckily, the ice wasn't that thick, and he acted quickly, and they were able to get him out of there.
We just need to find a way to wake the people up, because the point is simply this. It comes down to a choice. It's either freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, or enslavement. There is no such thing in between. There is no such thing as a little freedom, a little democracy, a little rule of law, just as there is no such thing as a little enslavement. So that's the choice. It comes down to it's either the globalitarian misanthropists or the people. It comes down to it's either us or them. And that's, I think, what this really is all about. Now, when my colleagues and I were elected to this parliament, there was no question about it. We were on the side of the people, because the people actually pay us to act in their best interest. That's our job. And once again, I will say to every single elected representative around the world, to every single member in every elected government.
Today we're going to talk about vitamin D dangers, which is very different than vitamin D toxicity. They're not the same. It's extremely rare to develop a vitamin D toxicity, which really involves only one symptom. That's too much calcium in the blood. I talked to Professor Bruce Hollis, who's the pioneer in vitamin D research, and asked him, have you ever seen a vitamin D toxicity problem? And he told me never. And he was involved with many vitamin D studies. You would have to consume hundreds of thousands of international units of vitamin D3 for months to develop any toxicity. And a lot of times people are afraid of even 10,000 international units. It sounds like a very large number. But I want to show you something right here. See this book right here? This book is called The Pharmacological Basis of Therapeutics. And I want to read something on page 1687. The maintenance dose usually ranges between 50,000 and 250,000 units daily. A few years later, if you look at the textbooks, it's down to between 400 and 600 IUs. Maybe it just worked too well and they had to take it out. I have no idea. In order for vitamin D to work, it's dependent on magnesium. If you have a magnesium deficiency and you take a lot of vitamin D, you are going to exaggerate that deficiency because the more vitamin D you take, the more magnesium you need. Both of them synergistically work together. Even if we think about the main problem with vitamin D toxicity, which is too much calcium in the blood, take a look at this research paper right here. Magnesium prevents vascular calcification. Magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker. Too much calcium can cause clots. And guess what? Magnesium helps to control that process. Number 2, zinc. The vitamin D receptor is dependent on zinc. When you start taking vitamin D and you're slightly zinc deficient, that deficiency can be exaggerated because the requirement of zinc goes up when you take more vitamin D3. What are the symptoms of a zinc deficiency? Your taste is not quite right, or your smell. You may get acne or flaky skin, or even lower amounts of testosterone because zinc is needed to build up testosterone. Vitamin K2. This is another one you should take. What does vitamin K2 do? Helps to prevent the buildup of calcium. The other function is to drive this calcium into the bone and the teeth. The last nutrient cofactor for vitamin D3 is vitamin A. I'm talking about the active form of vitamin A called retinol. The receptors for vitamin A actually sometimes bind with vitamin D receptors as a complex. They both work together. If one of them is lacking, the other one won't work optimally. Vitamin A also helps keep calcium out of your arteries. If you become deficient in vitamin A, you're going to notice that it's hard to see in the dark at night. You potentially can have dry eyes, dry skin, lowered immune system, maybe even some acne. I'm going to bring up 3 additional things on this topic. Number 1, I always recommend to take vitamin D3, not vitamin D2. It's not as potent. It's made synthetically. I would avoid it. And I would definitely avoid taking any synthetic vitamin D3. You want to get a natural source of vitamin D3. And lastly, many manufacturers, when they make their vitamin D, have hidden maltodextrin, or they might put in glucose syrup. They put this starch as a filler. They use it because it's a very cheap ingredient, and most companies that sell vitamin D3 use these fillers. There's a very simple way you can test this. You open up the capsule, mix it in some water, okay? Add a few drops of iodine, and if it turns dark purple, suspect a starch. This is called the starch test, and you can detect hidden maltodextrin and other starches in your supplements. If it doesn't have it in there, it'll just turn yellow or just slightly clear. Let's go back to magnesium. What are the foods high in magnesium? Anything leafy green, because green is chlorophyll, and at the heart of chlorophyll, you have magnesium. Also, you can get magnesium in chocolate. Just get the one that doesn't have the sugar if you're going to do chocolate. And also, magnesium is in certain nuts, but I would be careful about consuming too many nuts. Pumpkin seeds have a lot of magnesium. And if you were going to take a supplement, I would take magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate is easily absorbed, and I would take 800 or more. I've known people who needed to up the magnesium like 2,400 milligrams to get rid of their cramps. Zinc. Where do you get zinc from? Red meat, shellfish are 2 very good sources. And if you're going to take zinc as a supplement, make sure it's also in a blend of other trace minerals, just to make sure that you don't create a copper deficiency if you take it over a long period of time. Vitamin K2. Let's say, for example, you're doing 10,000 IUs of D3. then I would recommend you take 100 micrograms of vitamin K2 for every 10,000 international units of vitamin D3. And the version of K2 I would take would be MK7. You can get it from high quality grass-fed butter, kimchi, sauerkraut, consuming grass-fed beef, eggs. And then we get to vitamin A. Vitamin A is not beta carotene. Beta carotene is in like plants, vegetables. Don't try to get your vitamin A from vegetables. It's not going to work. I highly recommend you try to get your vitamin A not from a pill, but from food, egg yolks, liver. But my favorite source is cod liver oil. Why? Because cod liver oil not only has the omega-3 fatty acids, but it also has a nice balanced blend of vitamin A and vitamin D together. Since I did mention the word vitamin toxicity, if you haven't seen this video, you should check it out. I put it up right here.
Anything they say, you know, once I found out recycling was a lie. Do you know recycling's a lie, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There was a great episode of Penn and Teller's on that.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it's great. You would like it because it was funny, but it was also just absolutely cut.
It all goes in the same hole. They're not, you know, ever since China decided to stop taking our recyclables, that's it. They just put it, but we still separate it. We still have the blue garbage can and the green garbage can.
You'll get fined if you don't.
Yeah, in some places, yeah, that's right.
Juanetta Hoyt was a great farm wife during the day, vacuumed the rug, did the laundry, took care of her kids. By night, she smothered them to death with a pillow. Every time they get 6 to 9 months old, she smothered them to death with a pillow. And in the story, she was diagnosed with depression, lithium deficiency. She had diabetes, which is a chromium and vanadium deficiency, has gray hair, which is a copper deficiency. She has a receding hairline, much like a male pattern baldness, which is caused by a tin deficiency, T-I-N, tin deficiency. She also doesn't have any teeth in her mouth, which is osteoporosis, doesn't have any calcium, magnesium, boron, strontium, and other minerals. She has a goiter, which is an iodine deficiency. She has no less than 8 mineral deficiencies, and it's no wonder. She probably watched Oprah all day and ate ding-dongs and chocolate and things like that. And so you can understand why she was hearing voices telling her to send her kids to heaven because it wasn't nice on earth.
While many groups and governments wish to censor the internet, Israel and its partisans are among the most globally significant. They work to promote the Israel narrative while blocking facts about Palestine, the Israel lobby, and other subjects they wish to cover up. Much of this is done by devoted individuals acting independently, voluntarily, and relentlessly. But many of these activists are part of orchestrated, well-funded projects sponsored by the Israeli government and other pro-Israel groups. They utilize Israeli soldiers, students, American teens and seniors, and range from infiltrating Wikipedia to influencing YouTube. As we'll see, some even operate out of Jewish community centers in the US. One such group is the Israeli military's New Media Desk.
It is well known nowadays that what happens on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube has great influence on events as they occur on the ground. The internet, too, is a battleground. It is thus comforting to learn that the IDF employs soldiers who tweet, share, like, and more.
Another project initiated in 2011 by the National Union of Israeli Students has the stated goal to deepen and expand Hasbara, or state propaganda activities of students in the State of Israel. Under this program, Israeli students are paid to, quote, lead the battle against hostile websites. The students are tasked with what many would call shilling or trolling in online forums and social media. They're directed to create original content in the form of news reports and blogs, edit Wikipedia, inject pro-Israel messages into discussions on social media, as well as to report and remove what they consider to be allegedly anti-Semitic content.